mother's gaze can hold the sky together. Even today, Voletta Wallace walks past the framed platinum plaques in her Brooklyn living room and whispers the question she has asked since 1997. Who decided her only son could never come home? 28 years have passed, and every sunrise still feels like a countdown that refuses to reach zero. Christopher George Latour Wallace was already writing cinematic verses before he could afford a movie ticket. At 17, he ruled the corner of Fulton and Seine, James with a school book full of unwritten punchlines. The hustlers tipping him were paying to hear their lives explained in perfect internal rhyme. A cassette of those freestyles, marked only B.I.G., bounced through a chain of passenger seats until it landed on the spotless desk of a young executive named Sean Puffy Combs. Combs phoned the number on the J card, promised the moon, and delivered a check for $25,000. For a teenager who had just enough cash to clear past due Con Edison bills, that advance seemed like royalty. Years later, Voletta would admit the figure bought a blind loyalty that cost more than it paid. Yet in that moment, the sum felt bottomless. Christopher signed, bought a gold chain, and invested the rest in studio time that crackled with the hunger of a borough finally tired of living in the shadow of Queensbridge. Ready to Die hit like a blunt instrument. Funk Flex premiered Juicy on Hot 97 3 times in a single hour. Billboard's R&B charts bent under the weight of New East Coast cadences. While the world screamed his stage name, Biggie reread the fine print of his contract and realized success was calculated in percentages, most of which flowed up the bad boy ladder. A platinum plaque looked glorious on a wall, but it did not keep his Lexus from being repossessed when parking tickets piled up. One autumn night in 1996, bodyguard Gene Deal caught Big staring at account statements that never quite balanced. When Deal asked how an artist with 6 million sales could be broke, Big pulled a thick packet from his jacket. Inside sat a draft contract for a super group project called The Commission, Lil' Kim, Cam'ron, Charlie Baltimore, Jr. MAFIA, a proposed partnership worth roughly $62 million. Most crucially, the paperwork placed creative control outside the halls of Bad Boy Entertainment. "I'm about to get this money," Big murmured, but his eyes seemed to weigh the danger of dreaming too loudly. Around the same time, Combs' own aspirations were swelling. He was cutting a solo LP, No Way Out, and pitching himself to every magazine clamoring to cover the so-called East Coast Renaissance. Staffers later recalled an uncomfortable conversation. Rolling Stone offered a memorial cover package for Biggie. Combs insisted the timing would serve him better than a man already in his grave. The magazine went to press with Puffy's grin splashed beneath the headline, "The New King of Hip Hop." Critics wondered why the empire's fallen monarch warranted only a sidebar. Late winter 1997 should have been triumphant. Life After Death was mastered, anthems like Hypnotize were cued for radio, and Big traveled west to film a music video cameo that would double as momentum for the album. On the evening of March 9, he stepped onto a red carpet outside the Peterson Automotive Museum, and after party already crowded past legal capacity, fire marshals shut the doors shortly after midnight. Biggie and Terej Tao slid into the second of 2 black GMC Suburbans. Minutes later, for reasons no one can definitively explain, the vehicles swapped order. At 12:47 a.m., the convoy stopped at a light on Fairfax Avenue. A dark Chevy Impala eased alongside the passenger window. 4 shots erupted. Christopher Wallace slumped forward, pulse fading before the wheels rolled another block. The Suburban carrying Combs accelerated ahead and vanished around the corner. Nearby security cameras either malfunctioned or recorded nothing but headlights flaring in darkness. LAP radios logged a 2-minute silence between the first 911 call and the dispatch of the nearest cruiser. The autopsy was clinical, the grief was not. Voletta identified her son's body under fluorescent morgue lights, then flew home and buried him in a mahogany coffin lined with a Versus tie. She vowed that day never to let the investigation drift into cold case folklore. When early police briefings stalled, she filed a wrongful death suit seeking $400 million, partly to force discovery, partly to remind the city that a rap icon was also a man with a social security number and a mother who still set his place at Sunday dinner. Court motions revealed oddities. Missing ballistic evidence, witness statements that flipped after midnight phone calls, detectives pulled off the task force days, before promising leads were scheduled for follow-up. Rumors spread that certain officers moonlighted as security for death row records. A federal civil rights inquiry opened, then closed without comment. Files were sealed, unsealed, then resealed. Every time Valletta's attorneys thought they had momentum, someone higher up the chain stamped the paperwork confidential. While legal gears ground in circles, Bad Boy released Life After Death. The double album debuted at #1. Mourning fans worldwide bought 2 copies, one to play, one to keep in plastic. Combs shot high-budget videos in tribute, yet insiders whispered that marketing deadlines replaced memorial services. Not long after, No Way Out dropped, its opening track sampling Biggie's recorded voice like a ghostly endorsement. The LP moved 5 million units within a year. In a rare moment of candor, Combs later admitted on camera that at least 2 million of those sales were driven by the emotion surrounding his friend's death. Conspiracy chatter intensified when Keith D., an admitted participant in the 1996 Las Vegas shooting of Tupac Shakur, was arrested in 2023 and began speaking under oath about overlapping bounty offers in the Shakur and Wallace cases. He claimed certain record industry figures feared losing influence if the 2 most magnetic rappers of a generation formed independent collectives. The court transcripts fueled barbershop debates. Was the East Coast West Coast feud spontaneous, or a marketing strategy that became lethal once egos and street alliances multiplied? Meanwhile, federal investigators turned their lens toward Sean Combs for unrelated accusations ranging from sex trafficking to witness intimidation. In spring 2024, agents searched his homes in Los Angeles and Miami, seizing hard drives and handwritten ledgers. No charges directly linked him to Biggie's murder, yet the timing reopened every scar tissue theory fans had preserved for decades. Media outlets replayed archival clips of Big saying, "I just know the money got to come to me now," days before Los Angeles took that future away. Through it all, Valletta remained composed, answering journalists in the measured cadence of a schoolteacher who refuses to raise her voice. She endorsed the 2018 film City of Lies because its narrative focused less on gang mythology and more on institutional corruption. Former LAPD detective Russell Poole, whose character anchors the film, died of heart failure in 2015 after insisting he had uncovered internal collusion. Valletta praised him posthumously. "I found threads nobody else cared to tug. Commerce marched on." By 2022, Biggie's estate was valued near $200 million, boosted by streaming revenue and licensing deals that placed his likeness on streetwear collections and VR concerts. In early 2025, Primary Wave Music acquired half the catalog in a partnership promising stage musicals and immersive digital experiences. Some called the sale visionary, ensuring generational wealth for Biggie's daughter Tiana and son CJ. Others accused the estate of cashing out before unsealed files could diminish bidding wars. Valletta, asked whether the timing signaled pessimism about ever seeing an arrest, replied, "Justice and business are separate rooms in the same house. You can renovate one without burning down the other." Still, a thread of doubt lingers in her personal journals. She keeps a handwritten timeline, noting every moment her son considered leaving Bad Boy, each scribble paired with anonymous tips that surfaced months later. One entry marks a phone call from an industry accountant who allegedly overheard a guaranteed double the bounty if Biggie finalized the commission. No court has verified the claim, but the page remains, coffee-stained, underlined twice, tucked beside obituary clippings that trace a decade of friends lost to sensational headlines and unsolved gunfire. Tonight, the lights on Fulton Street switch from green to yellow and back to red while a mural of the notorious B.I.G. watches commuters drift past. The man in the crown is frozen mid-smirk, daring history to pick a side. His mother, somewhere nearby, locks her apartment door and reviews the day's news, searching for one sentence that might turn rumor into evidence. She knows the truth rarely arrives with fanfare. It creeps in, one unchecked detail at a time, until silence becomes impossible. Faith Renee Evans married Christopher Wallace 8 days after they met, sealing their vows with a church, basement reception, and a handshake promise to sing every rumor. For a season, she kept that promise. Her honey, laced hooks, turned One More Chance into a radio anthem, and her name became shorthand for the softer edge of Bad Boy's roster. But marriage to hip-hop's newly crowned king arrived with vertigo. Tour buses rattled past tabloid headlines, and a label schedule that never slept scattered the couple into different time zones. When Tupac Shakur hinted on wax that Faith had visited him in an LA studio, gossip pages set off a 4-alarm siren. Faith insisted she was there only to cut vocals, yet skeptics fanned the storyline until it grew its own wings. Years later, as documentaries re-examined the bi-coastal feud, Faith's every syllable was run through lie detectors of public opinion. She maintained, on podcasts, in memoirs, and in a 2024 press tour, that she never betrayed Big and that Sean Combs remained a brother-in-arms who would never plot against his marquee star. To her, the idea Bad Boy conspired in Biggie's unaliving is beyond ridiculous. Yet conflict flares whenever Faith's timeline collides with the $62 million commission deal. Industry accountants say she knew Big was shopping for new distribution. Critics claim her loyalty to the label outweighed marital fault lines. She denies it all, calling the chatter fanfic for clicks. Still, one truth is undeniable in Biggie's final year. She and Christopher spoke more through lawyers and tour managers than pillow talk. That void became fertile soil for suspicion. And suspicion has a way of sprouting vines around people who never asked for a harvest. Next came someone who watered every rumor like it was a rare orchid. Enter Jaguar Wright, the neo-soul vocalist known for torching stages, and lately, for torching reputations. In a viral 2023 livestream, she alleged that Faith juggled both Pac and Big, that studio staff captured compromising photos, and that Faith's unborn child might have been a DNA coin flip. Listeners gasped, pundits scrambled to verify. No photos surfaced, but the claim found oxygen in a social media world primed for intrigue. Jaguar didn't stop there. She labeled Faith the snake in Biggie's Eden, and called Diddy the puppet master who cut the strings when the marionette wanted to dance alone. To back her charge, she cited back-channel conversations with roadies who said they overheard payouts for silence. Again, proof remained elusive, yet the allegations stuck like wet paint because they echoed private doubts Voletta Wallace had never fully voiced in public. Faith's camp threatened legal action, but the restart button was jammed. The live stream had already racked up millions of views. In the court of public perception, even unverified claims can set lead dominoes tumbling. Old interviews were re-examined. A 2012 radio segment where Faith called Bad Boy a family that fights but stays family resurfaced. Critics replayed it beside her newer defensive comms, arguing she sounded more executive than widow. Jaguar, meanwhile, doubled down, claiming she wrote a sworn statement for an unnamed federal probe. Whether that document exists remains unproven, but the mere hint fed bloggers for months. Each blog post edged another segment of the audience away from sympathy and toward suspicion. While the fanbase argued online, an entirely different battleground opened in a Las Vegas courtroom. Dwayne Keefe D. Davis spent 2 decades as a footnote, an admitted accessory in the Tupac Shakur shooting who somehow avoided prosecution. That ended in 2023 when Nevada police booked him on a murder charge tied to Pac's death. During interrogation, Keefe claimed rival moguls offered bounties on both Shakur and Wallace, each doubling if the target left his label. He named no moguls in open court, but transcripts leaked within hours, and the internet filled in every blank with bright neon arrows pointing at Sean Combs. Prosecutors, careful to avoid defamation claims, called Keefe's story on plank in a larger platform. Yet investigators quietly flew to New York to re-interview witnesses from Big's circle. Unsealed warrants revealed a hunt for any record indicating money moved from Bad Boy accounts to West Coast intermediaries in early 1997. Auditors found no smoking wire transfer, only mountains of cash withdrawals typical for a label where club promo, DJ drops, and street team marketing ran on untraceable bills. Still, the momentum mattered. The LAPD reopened portions of the Wallace file. 2 retired officers finally submitted affidavits describing evidence they say was boxed, stickered, confidential, and never logged into the master chain. One box allegedly contained photographs of the suburban convoy taken minutes before the shooting. If authenticated, those images could verify whether a last-second vehicle swap doomed Big to the passenger seat that caught 4 bullets. While labs enhance grainy negatives, Keefe D. awaits trial. Defense attorneys hint they will subpoena industry executives to testify about multi-coast retaliation cycles. Observers predict a tug-of-war. Hip-hop may yet put its own boardroom on the witness stand. And that brings us to the marble walls where history, rumor, and profit finally collide. Spring 2025. Federal marshals escort Sean Combs into a packed New York courtroom, not for murder, but on a sweeping racketeering indictment built around trafficking, intimidation, and money laundering. Prosecutors stitched together NDAs, settlement checks, and bodyguard confessions to argue Bad Boy was less a record label than an a la carte coercion service. Among the government's exhibits sits a familiar item, a draft contract for the commission, highlighted to show how its completion would have gutted Bad Boy's projected revenue. Combs' lawyers insist the document proves only that Biggie planned side ventures, not betrayal. They call the notion he arranged a hit, cis-fi pulp. Still, jurors lean forward each time a witness utters the date, March 9. The defense objects that Biggie's homicide is outside the indictment. The judge allows limited exploration to establish potential patterns. On day 10, prosecutors play a grainy voicemail left by Big 3 weeks before his unaliving. It's love, bro, but I gotta own my future. Commission about to feed the next decade. The message by itself is benign. In context, it feels like foreshadowing penned by a cruel screenwriter. Faith Evans takes the stand under subpoena. She speaks steadily, calls Christopher, the love of my life, repeats that Diddy would die for Big before he'd ever harm him. Cross-examination zeroes in on her 1996 studio visit with Tupac. Faith says she delivered vocals, nothing more. The gallery rustles with skepticism, but the transcript captures no contradiction. Outside, camera crews pan to fans chanting lines from Juicy, rewriting the hook into a plea for justice. Valletta's empty seat in the front row reminds everyone why the trial feels unfinished, no matter the verdict. Yet the real reckoning may arrive far from any jury box. If Combs is convicted, federal agencies can compel full disclosure of LAPD files sealed since the late 90s. Civil attorneys for the Wallace estate are poised to pounce, arguing wrongful death damages accrue interest as long as negligence remains hidden. Estimates already flirt with $500 million, but money is a blunt instrument against grief. Then comes the cultural arithmetic. Biggie's catalog, half now owned by Primary Wave, generates 8 figures annually. Broadway producers are workshopping a jukebox musical. VR developers plot an interactive bed, Stowie tour guided by Big's digital avatar. Critics ask whether profiting from nostalgia without resolving the crime is a moral overdraft. Fans answer by streaming Sky's the Limit another 100 million times because memory and protest sometimes share the same playlist. In private, friends describe Faith Evans visiting Valletta's grave on the anniversary of Christopher's birth, leaving Lilacs and whispering a prayer, no cameras record. Gene Deal still refuses to ride in SUVs with tinted glass. Kirk Burroughs teaches music business classes, hammering one lesson: own your masters, or the masters own your fate. As for Jaguar Wright, she promises a televised deposition if subpoenaed, swearing she'll drop the receipts, a phrase that now terrifies publicists more than any rap lyric ever could. And somewhere in evidence storage, a cardboard box awaits a chain of custody signature that might stitch decades of rumor into a single, devastating fact. Whether that signature ever happens will decide if the notorious B.I.G. remains the patron saint of unsolved mysteries, or becomes the fulcrum that finally tilts an industry toward accountability. In the corner of that Brooklyn living room, beneath gold plaques and a folded flag from Christopher's casket, rests Valletta Wallace's final notebook. The last line she wrote is 6 words long: truth comes, even when hope limps. She underlined it twice, then closed the cover. The limping step is here now, inside court filings, leaked transcripts, and newly unsealed photographs. Whether it becomes a sprint depends on judges, juries, and a music culture learning that legacy is louder than any chart position. Until then, every spin of Hypnotize is a candle, every bar spit by a new Brooklyn rapper a flare over the East River, signaling that the crown still matters. And so does the cost of wearing it. If you've watched this far, drop a comment. What single piece of evidence would finally end the debate for you? And subscribe, because the next upload dives into the unsigned artist Big Co., signed days before he died, the one whose demo may contain the last verse Biggie ever recorded.